Tonight, Israel's embattled Prime Minister issues a fresh rallying cry, insisting his ground invasion of Gaza is still on. This is a Sky News special programme live from Jerusalem. Amid reports the invasion could be delayed at the United States' request, Benjamin Netanyahu says he is in control.
All Hamas militants are doomed. I want to make it very clear. The timing of the operation of the IDF is unanimously determined by the cabinet that runs the war.
Also ahead, fuel running out fast. The UN's relief agency in Gaza warns a lack of aid could halt its operations. Facing calls from Israel to resign, the UN chief rejects a claim he justified Hamas's attack on October the 7th. Fears of a wider conflict grow as Israel's enemies, backed by Iran, convene in Beirut, but there's a warning tonight from President Biden.
My warning to the Ayatollah was that if they continue to move against those troops, we will respond.
And a heroic last act, the story of a British-Israeli man who sacrificed his life to defend others from Hamas gunmen. Good evening from Jerusalem, and we start with a defiant message from Israel's Prime Minister that his ground invasion of Gaza will go ahead, and the decision of troops to go in will only be made by his war cabinet. It follows reports the operation could be delayed at the United States' request to allow them to move air defences into the region. In Gaza, the situation on the ground remains dire. The UN's relief agency there has told me it may have to stop operations in the morning unless Israel stops blocking fuel from reaching the enclave. More on that in a moment. First, here is Benjamin Netanyahu.
All Hamas militants are doomed. Above the earth, underground, within Gaza, and outside of Gaza. We're getting prepared for the ground invasion. I will not tell you how, when, and how much. I will not go into all the considerations that we take to heart because most of them are not even known to the public, and that's how it should be. It is good that that is the way so that we can secure the lives of our soldiers. I want to make it very clear. The timing of the operation of the IDF is unanimously determined by the cabinet that runs the war.
Let's bring in Sky's security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes. And Deborah, a rallying call then to the nation, but obviously no word on when this ground operation is going to begin.
No, but we know for a fact, because we can see them, there are a large number of Israeli ground troops here in southern Israel. In fact, tonight, we're obviously in the south, you can hear booms in the background that sound quite a lot like artillery, far away from where we are here in the town of Escalation, but clearly the sound is of fire coming from this area towards the direction of Gaza. We've also, you can hear warplanes in the air. We've heard a couple of helicopters as well. So military activity definitely still taking place. Obviously, it's airstrikes at the moment. No word yet, like you said, of the ground invasion. But I was with troops yesterday who would be part of any ground offensive, and they very much looked like they were preparing to move forwards, definitely not preparing to pause. But for the Prime Minister, this Israel's darkest hour happened on his watch, and he needs to show strength and purpose to a country whose confidence in his leadership will have been shaken to the core by the events of October the 7th. He vowed, didn't he, in his address that he would, in his words, destroy Hamas and return those more than 200 hostages that are still being held in Gaza. But these are gifts that he cannot guarantee to be able to give to Israel. There's huge risk, high stakes, a lot of pressure on Israel about the conduct of its military campaign, remembering the civilians that are still in Gaza and are getting killed as well as Israel conducts its air campaign. And then too, once this ground invasion does happen, the repercussions in the region are significant if Iran does get involved. And that is why the United States, with the president tonight giving that clear warning to Tehran, and also physically moving more military capability into this region, 2 carrier strike groups already here, a lot of air defence systems also on their way. It underlines the high stakes here as we wait to see how this next evolution in the war has a consequence for the region.
Deborah, thank you very much indeed. Well, tonight the United Nations was voting on another resolution calling for a humanitarian pause to Israeli strikes on Gaza to allow in aid. 2 previous resolutions calling for pauses had failed, and the latest vote that took place in the last few minutes did not pass as it was vetoed by Russia and China. Let's speak to our US correspondent, Mark Stone. In fact, I think we're going to hear from the UN now.
Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2023/792 please raise their hand? Votes, those against? Abstentions? Has not been approved. So the result of the voting is as follows: 10 votes in favor, 3 votes against, 2 votes abstention. The draft resolution has not been adopted owing to the negative vote of a permanent member of the Security Council.
Let's speak then to our US correspondent, Mark Stone. So, Mark, once again, unsurprisingly, stalemate at the Security Council. How often do we say this?
I know. I mean, that really is a reflection there in the last 30 seconds that you just played of the top diplomatic body in the world unable to act. It really is a remarkable. It's remarkable the way it has all unfolded. The background is that, as you mentioned, there were 2 votes last week. They were calling for ceasefires. There was a vote, first one was tabled by Brazil calling for a ceasefire, then Russia calling for a ceasefire. Then the Americans, they both failed because America, Britain and others do not want to see a ceasefire explicitly because they believe that undermines Israel's right, as they see it, to defend itself. So they didn't vote for those. At the weekend, the Americans spent the whole weekend moulding language which didn't call for a ceasefire, but created a resolution which they've just voted on, which called for a pause in hostilities to allow for humanitarian aid so desperately needed to get into Gaza. Russia then said that they wouldn't support that, and they'd table their own another resolution calling for a ceasefire once again. And so what's happened is the first vote, America's vote, has just taken place. And because it doesn't call explicitly for a ceasefire, Russia and China have vetoed it, so it's failed. Now, in the next few minutes in the chamber, Russia's resolution will be voted on, and that will fail too, because America, almost certainly, will veto that. So there we have it. And the American representative, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, the ambassador for the United States in the chamber, has described what has just unfolded as Russia's cynical and irresponsible behavior, because it does not. America is deeply irritated that Russia has vetoed this, which would have called for a pause in hostilities, not a ceasefire, but at least a pause to allow aid to get in. So we'll stay tuned and we'll see what happens with the next vote. But I can see no other option than America vetoing that one as well. And so for the people of Gaza, well, nothing.
Yeah, not hugely surprising, unfortunately. Now, Joe Biden has been speaking tonight about Iran.
He has. He's got the Australian Prime Minister in town at the moment. They gave a statement and took some questions in the Rose Garden at the White House. He was asked about Iran, about Iran's involvement, and asked in the Hamas attacks, and asked specifically about attacks that have taken place over the course of the past few days against American troops who are based in northern Syria fighting ISIS, and also in Iraq as well, also fighting ISIS. They have been attacked by Iranian proxies operating in both Syria and in Iraq. It is just a hint of how this conflict could spiral beyond Gaza and beyond Israel. And the president had this warning for the Ayatollahs in Tehran.
We have had troops in the region since 9/11 to go after ISIS and prevent its reemergence in both, anyway, in the region, having nothing to do with Israel at all. My warning to the Ayatollah was that if they continue to move against those troops, we will respond, and he should be prepared.
President Biden, not perhaps at his most fluent, but you got the idea there that he is sending a message. We will respond if you continue to attack our assets in the region. Incidentally, Mark, it is, I think, becoming clear that one of the reasons that the Americans are putting pressure on Israel not to go in with its ground offensive just yet is because they are very concerned that if there is a ground offensive, Iran and its proxies would retaliate more in terms of attacking American assets in the region. And America does not yet have its full military capability in the region. It's got one strike carrier group, but the other one, the USS Eisenhower and aircraft carrier, is not yet in the region. It's still in the Atlantic, getting itself into the Mediterranean. I think America wants to have as much as it can in terms of a military deterrence in place in the Mediterranean before there is any ground offensive in Gaza.
OK, Mark, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's turn now to the situation in Gaza, where health officials claim more than 750 people were killed in the last 24 hours. The Gaza Health Ministry, which is run by Hamas, says 756 people have been killed since yesterday. That would make it the deadliest day since the war began 2.5 weeks ago. Well, the UN's relief agency in Gaza has told me it could be forced to stop work in the territory because of dwindling fuel supplies. I spoke to Juliet Toomer. She is Director of Communications at the organisation's Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees.
Supplies of fuel that UNRWA has and manages are running out, and they're running out fast. This is why we are calling for an urgent shipment of fuel into the Gaza Strip tonight. If we do not get that fuel that we urgently need tonight, we will have to take some very tough decisions tomorrow morning that no humanitarian aid worker should be forced to make.
What will those decisions be? And are you hearing anything about the possibility of getting fuel in tonight at all?
To your second question, all we have is hope, and all we have is the urging and the advocacy that we've been doing. To your first question, I mean, it's simple things like we won't be able to drive our cars, which we use to deliver assistance, or the trucks that UNRWA runs and UNRWA owns and that are marked as UN vehicles. We won't be able to use those trucks and go get the supplies that are coming on these convoys. We will not be able to deliver the wheat flour that we've been giving to bakeries around the Gaza Strip for people to take bread. Same will apply for medical facilities or water and sanitation stations in the Gaza Strip. So it's a chain. Fuel is absolutely critical to that chain. If that chain is cut, which is about the lives of people, the lives of people will also be cut totally unnecessarily.
Israel is saying that Hamas is stockpiling fuel for its own purposes.
Yeah, I'm not in a position to comment about that statement from Israel.
Yeah, I mean, the IDF is tweeting an image that they're saying is a Hamas fuel depot, but other people are saying it is a UN fuel depot. I mean, do you feel able to comment on that or not?
I'm not in a position to comment on that tweet.
Okay, so apart from fuel... Yeah, carry on.
What I do know is that UNRWA needs fuel. UNRWA needs it for its humanitarian operations. We have more than 600,000 people who have sought shelter in 150 UNRWA schools. They're spread all over the Gaza Strip. UNRWA has become the lifeline of these hundreds of thousands of people. But if we want to continue, and we do want to continue to help them and provide assistance, we need fuel.
And do you know what the situation is in the hospitals, given the, problems with fuel?
I mean, their supplies are also running out, and the fuel is also running out.
And I must ask you, how concerned are you that you won't get the fuel, and how concerned are you then for the coming days and the coming weeks and what is expected to happen in Gaza?
Okay, I think we are beyond the stage of being concerned or expressing concern. The situation is alarming. It's a tragedy unfolding at the world's watch. Humanity is really failing the people, the civilians, the families of the Gaza Strip. All we're asking for at UNRWA is to be able to allow to fulfill our humanitarian duties. That's not too much to ask. That's not too much to ask.
That was Juliet Toomer speaking to me earlier. Just to confirm, the Russian vote at the UN Security Council has, as expected, failed, so nothing much doing there tonight. Joining me now is Dan Gilliman. He is a former Israeli ambassador to the United Nations. Thanks very much for being with us. I want to talk about Gaza and fuel in just a moment. But first of all, do you accept the explanation today of the Secretary-General of the UN saying that he clearly condemned the act of terror inflicted on Israel? Do you accept what he had to say today?
Well, I think what he said today is too little and too late, because what he said yesterday was very, very clear, and in a totally ridiculous and outrageous statement, he actually justified the actions of those horrible killers of Hamas. I must tell you, I served at the UN for 6 years with 2 Secretary Generals, Kofi Annan and Ban Ki-moon. I cannot imagine either of them making a statement like that. I think that Guterres, the present Secretary General, is possibly the weakest and lowest Secretary General the UN ever had. And after a statement like that, it's time for him to go.
Just to make the point, though, that he did go on to say in that speech that he made yesterday, he did say, and I quote, "The grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas." I mean, he did say that in that speech.
Well, I thank him very much for this very gracious understanding, but I think that in the context of his speech, he cannot justify what he said. I'm really sorry.
OK, Mr. Gilliman, I just want to ask you then about something else he said in his speech, which is about the collective punishment, as he put it, of the Palestinian people. And I want to talk about that in the context of the blockade and keeping fuel out of Gaza. I just wonder if you think that that is really necessary.
You know, I'm very puzzled by the constant concern which the world and also Britain, I must say, Mark, is showing for the Palestinian people, and is actually showing for these horrible, inhuman animals who have done the worst atrocities that this century has seen, and the worst atrocities that Jews have suffered since the Holocaust. I mean, you know, when the United States reacted to 9/11, I don't remember people shedding tears for the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. Your country, Mark, actually, Britain, actually joined them and even sent your royals to fight in Afghanistan. When the Ukrainians reacted to Russia's invasion, I don't remember people worrying about the poor Russian soldiers and whether they had enough food. All of a sudden, when it comes to Israel, everybody is becoming a great humanitarian, totally forgetting what happened 2.5 weeks ago, which is unforgettable and unforgiven.
But I don't think anybody's forgetting what happened 2.5 weeks ago. But is it possible, it must be possible surely, to draw a distinction between Hamas, gunmen committing appalling acts of terror, and civilians, innocent civilians, Palestinian lives inside Gaza? It must be possible to draw that distinction, surely.
It would be possible if Hamas really cared about their people, and if Hamas allowed their people to leave these dangerous places and actually get away from these horrors. The problem is that Hamas has always, and is today as well, using its own people as human shields. It is hiding rockets and explosives in private homes and in kitchens and in bathrooms. It is hiding its own leaders in hospitals. And it is actually using its people as human shields. The big difference between Israel and Hamas is that while Israel is protecting its people and its citizens and making every effort to avoid as many civilian casualties as possible, Hamas is actually using its people as human shields. And I'll say something which may sound horrible, and it is horrible. But for Hamas, the more civilian casualties, the better, because it serves their propaganda war. They don't care about their people. If they did care about their people, when we left Gaza 18 years ago, they would have turned Gaza into the Singapore of the Middle East. Instead, they turned it into a launching pad for missiles and into a terror base. And their people are actually held hostages by their horrible, inhuman, animal-like terrorists.
Okay, and just finally, are the Israelis showing enough concern for the innocent people by operating this blockade and by bombarding Gaza to an extent that they have never done before, obviously causing huge numbers of civilian lives?
You know, the reason we're doing something we've never done before, because what has been done to us has never been done before in human history. I don't remember, except maybe for the Nazis, terrorists, human beings, coming to homes, going from room to room, totally destroying innocent people, beheading babies, raping women. And after this, would you expect Israel to just sit still? No. We go back, we try as hard as we can. And just some of your British generals who've actually described the Israeli army as the most moral army in the world. We warn them. We throw leaflets. We tell them we're coming. We ask them to leave. Hamas makes them stay because the more civilian casualties they have, the better their propaganda war is. It's horrible.
Okay.
It's totally cynical, but that's the reality we're facing. And even in that reality, I assure you, Mark, we're doing our most to hurt as little and as few civilian people as possible.
Okay, Mr. Gilman, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mark.
Now, the funeral has taken place for a British-Israeli woman and her 2 daughters murdered in the Hamas attack. Lian Sharabi was killed in the Be'eri kibbutz. Her daughters Noya and Yahel went missing. Both were later found dead. The girls father and his brother are still missing. Our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has sent this report from the town of Kfar Harif in southern Israel.
In the cemetery of a small moshav, under the shade of the trees, a British mother and her two daughters were buried beneath the soil of Israel, in the land they made their home. Liane, Noya and Yahal Sharabi were killed in Be'eri that Saturday morning when the peace of Shabbat and the gentle sanctuary of the kibbutzim was shattered by the hatred of Hamas.
What you saw now is what happened when we fail, when Israel failed even just for a minute to protect their citizens, and this is what happened.
Liane's husband and the girl's father, Eli, is thought to be in Gaza, one of the 220 hostages whose fate is unknown and whose absence sits heavy on this country's future. 19 days after the terror attacks, a lot of the world's attention has shifted to the military operation against Hamas and the international diplomacy to try and stop this conflict spreading. But there are still so many families burying their dead, and many who still have no idea what actually happened to some of their loved ones.
And we enjoyed hearing of her life.
In a recorded message sent from England, a mother and grandmother remembered the lives of her girls.
We will miss our girl to the end of our days and keep her in our hearts forever, tucked away with the fondest memory of her 48 years. Good night. Sleep tight, sweetheart.
School friends sat by the graves, not wanting to leave, but forced to say a final goodbye in a moment that has forever stolen any naivety of youth. Palestinian or Israeli, this is now a place of constant funerals, the daily burial of innocents who wanted no part in this fight, and with the depressing certainty of more to come. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in southern Israel.
You're watching a Sky News special programme from Jerusalem. Coming up, the picture no one in Israel's leadership wanted to see: senior figures in Hamas, Hezbollah and Palestinian Islamic Jihad meeting together earlier. What could that mean for the possibility of a wider regional conflict?
Well, this is about the fourth fish kill in about 6 years, and it is directly as a result of agricultural pollution, namely slurry. It couldn't have happened at a worse time when a lot of fish are now moving upstream to spawn into the upper parts of the river. So far, we can't fully assess the damage done, but we know that hundreds of trout, salmon parr, and also Dullahan, that's the name of a local fish, have been killed. It's absolutely devastating, and it's absolutely heartbreaking, because so much work has been done over the last 7-8 years by local conservation groups, by all the local anglers, and also involving the local communities who have been involved in cleanups of the river and removing all the debris, rubbish, agricultural pollution or commercial. And the source of this recent pollution has already been detected. We are hoping that there will be litigation, there will be taken to be against the people, the perpetrators of this here terrible act. It's done so much awful damage. However, we have in the past campaigned against the paltry petty fines that are being meted out by the courts here in the north of Ireland. And if this was to happen in England or in Wales, Scotland, there'd be fines of up to 20 to 30,000 pounds, but we're getting slap on the wrist type fines here of 2,000 pounds for devastation that's going to take many years for the river to recover. And so much work has been done by the keepers of the Kellan.
5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.
Welcome back. Let's turn now to the possibility of this conflict spreading wider across the region. Today, Israel launched rockets into Syria. State media in Syria claimed the airstrike hit a number of military positions near the southwestern city of Deraa and killed 8 of its soldiers. Israel, meanwhile, said the attack was launched in retaliation to earlier fire from Syria. And there was another ominous sign that this could be about to become a war on multiple fronts. Today, an image was released of senior figures from the Iranian-backed militia groups Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, all meeting together in Beirut. According to Hezbollah, the meeting was held to discuss how to achieve, and I quote, a real victory for the resistance in Gaza. And in a sign of further discontent within the Arab world, today President Erdogan of Turkey defended Hamas, insisting they were not terrorists but freedom fighters protecting their land and their people. These pictures were released by Mr. Erdogan's office.
Bir terör örgütü değil. Hamas is not a terrorist organization, but a liberation and mujahideen group that leads a struggle to protect its lands and citizens. Israel's attacks on Gaza and other regions, as well as missile fire on Israeli territory, must be stopped. This issue of the release of the hostages should be concluded quickly through the start of direct or indirect negotiations.
Well, the question many people are now asking is what would the trigger be for Israel's regional enemies to get involved? And if they were to attack Israel, how would its biggest ally, the United States, respond? Well, joining me now is Ari Aramesh, is a Democrat strategist and foreign policy analyst. Thanks very much for being with us. So, first of all, the US is clearly building up its military assets in the region. Is this a deterrence, or is it because they really fear this could explode into a regional war?
Up to last Sunday, it was a deterrent posture. You have USS Eisenhower now going, instead of going to the Mediterranean, it's going to Central Command area, going to the Persian Gulf. You have USS Gerald Ford, the other strike group containing about 10 other ships already in the Eastern Mediterranean. And there are talks that USS Nimitz might set sail and leave the United States and actually go to the CENTCOM area of operations. As you know, Central Command, headquartered in Doha, Qatar, has its naval operations in Manama, Bahrain. It covers the Arabian Sea, the Persian Gulf, and clearly covers everything from Afghanistan all the way up to Israel. So that covers sort of the area of operations for the Central Command. Now, I think Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, on their Sunday appearances on the various American news shows, made it clear that they are no longer talking about sending a message of de-escalation to Tehran. For the first 2 weeks of this conflict, the message to Tehran was this: you de-escalate, we'll back off. We just want to make sure that our ally Israel is protected. That didn't go well. It seems Tehran has interpreted these messages of de-escalation as a sign of weakness, unwillingness, and lack of political will in Washington to take action. And that's why we saw so many attacks by Iranian proxies in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon, especially in Iraq and Syria, against U.S. forces. The Assad air base in Iraq, the Al-Tanf air base in Syria, and also some U.S. troops in northeastern Syria in the province of Hasaki, which falls right in between Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, came under attack. We just had reports today that 26 American service members were wounded, lightly wounded. They're all back in active duty service, but again, they were attacked. So it shows that Iranian proxies, perhaps, and most likely, with the green light of Tehran, and Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who's the supreme leader of Iran, who is the key decision maker there, they are taking shots at U.S. forces, and they're not really taking these warnings seriously, and that's why we're seeing not only strike groups going in there, but 2,000 Marines, an F-16 squadron, and an F-15 Eagle squadron going from Britain to the Persian Gulf to make sure that Iran is taking these threats seriously.
Yeah. Now, I mean, if Hezbollah did become involved in this, how difficult would that make things then for Israel?
The question of Hezbollah getting involved again goes back to Tehran. If you noticed, right before I came on the screen, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, in his meeting with Mr. Nakhala, the leader of Islamic Jihad, in that room, he was sitting under two portraits. Those figures are not Lebanese leaders. It was a portrait of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the current supreme leader of Iran, and Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the former supreme leader of Iran, the man who led the 1979 Islamic Revolution. So it shows Hezbollah, a Lebanese political and militant and terror organization, for that matter, has its loyalties directly to Tehran. So if Hezbollah were to get engaged, it would come, again, as I always say, if Hamas is Iran's ally, Hezbollah is Iran's beloved child. So if there were to be an engagement, it would be with Iran's blessing without a doubt. Question is Iran really willing to risk the destruction of Hezbollah with U.S. and Israeli attacks to save Hamas? But also, is Iran willing to let Hamas get completely destroyed, an organization that has helped build and support for the past 22 years at least, since 1995, for the past 30 years for that matter, and not do anything about it? I'm not sure if cooler heads are going to prevail. So, yeah. Okay, Ari, appreciate that. And thank you very much indeed for coming on. This is a Sky News special program on the Israel-Hamas war. Coming up, a heroic last act, the story of a British-Israeli man who sacrificed his life to defend others from Hamas gunmen.
Welcome back to Jerusalem. Stories are still emerging from the massacres of October the 7th, some of quite extraordinary bravery. One such is the story of a young off-duty British-Israeli soldier, Aner Shapiro, who threw back 7 grenades targeted at a shelter by the gunmen during the terror attack on the music festival. The 8th grenade killed him. Today I spoke to his grandmother, and she began by telling me more about what her grandson did on that awful day.
So they were trying to get out from the area of the party, and then there were alarms and there were missiles, and they went into a shelter. He was with his friend, Hirsch Goldberg, but they were about 30 other people there. First of all, he calmed them down. He said the army was only half an hour away and he was sure that everything was going to be okay. And so we know everybody was grateful that there is something who takes leadership, because he was a natural leader wherever he was. And then when the terrorists came nearer, he stood at the entrance, and when they started throwing grenades into the shelter, he said, I'm going to throw them back, and if I miss one, you do the rest of the work. And he just stood there, and he threw back one grenade after the other. From what his friends told us, he managed to throw back about 7 grenades, and then the last one exploded in his hands.
And you must be very proud, in a sense, of what he did. People have been saying that he saved our lives.
Yeah. The first day, we didn't know anything. We were just looking for him at hospitals. We thought perhaps he was wounded. We didn't know about his heroic, empty-handed battle against the terrorists. But on the third day, on Monday, people who survived the attack started calling us. It took them time to find out who he was, who his family was. They started calling, and one after the other said, he saved our lives. And they told us a story of how he stood there. And you must see, after apparently he collapsed, died, I hope he didn't suffer much, the terrorists went back in. They took 5 or 6 hostages. One of them, Aner's friend, with whom he came to the party, Hirsch Goldberg, put them on a car, took them to Gaza, apparently. Then, before they left, they went into the shelter again, shot everybody that they could shoot. Miraculously, a few people survived, but only those who were not injured severely, so only moderately injured, because it took hours before any help arrived.
I mean, it's just the most awful thing for you and the family. Just tell us about him, a little bit about him.
Well, first of all, you can see the good-natured smile on his face, extremely handsome, good-natured, gifted in all areas, in all kinds of areas. He painted very well. He played the piano until he was 18, until he finished high school. Then he became more interested in pop music, spoken word music, and wrote hundreds of texts, spoken word texts. Some of them he also composed music.
Are you shocked that this could happen in a country where security is so important?
I'm shocked. I think everybody is shocked. And it reminds me of the Yom Kippur War, and to make the same mistake after 50 years, not being ready, is a terrible thing. But in Yom Kippur, we pulled ourselves together, and that's what we're going to do now.
And his friend is now a hostage. You're pretty certain about that. What are your thoughts about the hostages and what should happen in terms of trying to get them out?
Well, we hope that they are given medical help, because we know Hirsch Goldberg was injured in this attack. And many others were injured, and there are children there. So first of all, we hope they are given medical help and they are kept under good conditions. And it might be reasonable for the Hamas to do so because there's going to be negotiations. And of course, we hope that these negotiations are successful and we're going to see them back.
Some have come out.
And some have come out. And even if the price is high, I think Israel has always been willing to pay a high price for its citizens and for its soldiers.
Just finally, how worried are you about the coming days and weeks and months here?
I'm worried because we know very little, and it might be only the beginning of a bigger event that extends beyond the borders of Israel. But what I'm really worried about is that for many years now we thought that we have a local conflict with the Palestinians that is solvable, we thought, and that we can come to an agreement. But now I think what appears to happen is that there's not really a recognition in the area and also in some countries that are further away, that there's not really a recognition in the right of Israel to exist. And this is something that is shocking to us because we thought that's already a fact, that already has been recognized, and now we're only talking about the borders. But no, it has not been recognized, so Israel is now fighting for its very existence.
Okay, Yamima, thank you very much for talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I'll be back at 10. Let's go back to Gillian now in London.
Mark, thank you. Let's take you through some of the day's other news now. 2 Metropolitan Police officers have been sacked after being found guilty of gross misconduct over the stop and search of 2 black athletes. Ricardo dos Santos and Bianca Williams claimed they were racially profiled when they were pulled over on their way home from training in July 2020. A South Wales police officer who blackmailed underage girls to send him explicit photos has been jailed for life. Lewis Edwards, who's 24, posed as a teenage boy and groomed more than 200 girls online. A schoolboy who was stabbed to death by his friend was unlawfully killed, according to a new coroner's inquest. 17-year-old Yusuf Maki died at Hale Barnes in Greater Manchester when he was stabbed in the chest by his friend Joshua Molnar in 2019. Molnar was previously cleared of murder and manslaughter. Time now to get the latest sports news with Teddy.
Thank you, Gillian. Hello there. It's a busy night in the Champions League. 3 British teams in action. Celtic looking for their first win since 2017 in the group stage. We're ahead after just 4 minutes against Spanish side Atletico Madrid. Kogo Furuhashi putting them ahead for Antoine Griezmann. Equalised. Griezmann's also missed a penalty. Palmer put Celtic back in front 2-1, but then Alvaro Morata, former Chelsea striker, has equalised once again for Atletico Madrid. Atletico have had a man sent off as well. Manchester City had the lead in Switzerland against Young Boys thanks to Manuel Akanji before Meshak Elia equalised 4 minutes later. Erling Haaland, though, a penalty put City back in front before he scored his second of the night. Good right foot finish to make it a comfortable end to the match for his side. Be 3 wins from 3 for City, it looks like. Tough night for Newcastle at the moment, trailing at home to German side Borussia Dortmund. So they took the lead before half-time through Felix and Metzger, who went to Dortmund from Manchester City as a young player. Monali admits England are low in confidence ahead of their crucial World Cup cricket clash with Sri Lanka on Thursday. England have lost 3 of the 4 matches they've played in India so far, including against South Africa on Saturday. Means that they must beat Sri Lanka if they're to keep alive their faint hopes of qualifying for the semi-finals.
We've tried a few things and probably tried too much, but I think it comes down to batters scoring runs, bowlers taking wickets and us fielding well and preparing well. And I think we have prepared well. It's just not really happened for us. I think we're low on confidence, which is something that we really need to get back.
Cam Norrie in tennis news is out of the Vienna Open at the round of 16 stage, losing to Alexander Zverev in straight sets. Britain's top seed was beaten 6-2, 6-4 inside 80 minutes as Zverev booked his place in the quarter-finals. The German plays the winner of Matteo Arnaldo and Andrei Rublev. Head to Sky Sports News or our website for more on today's sports stories. We're back later.
This is Sky News. Coming up, the record-breaking hurricane that's hit parts of Mexico.
Have breached the road. There is a lot of gas being fired all around us. It is an absolute carnival kind of atmosphere out here for Prime Minister Modi's decisive victory. These students are defying the prohibitory orders and now they're going to be arrested. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news.
The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. This on any given day would have been bustling with people, but today it's absolutely deserted. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
A hurricane described as catastrophic has hit Mexico's southern coast, bringing winds of up to 165 miles per hour and heavy rain. The hurricane, named as Otis, is the strongest hurricane to hit Mexico and one of the fastest strengthening, going from a tropical storm to a Category 5 in just 12 hours. Otis is continuing to bring heavy rain to the region, with fears of mudslides and flash flooding. Let's take a look at the weather here for you.
Warm memories wherever you go.
To fly.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
There'll be widespread showers or longer spells of rain this week and strong winds in the north and south. It'll be mild and rather cloudy at first tomorrow, with widespread showers and patchy drizzle in the rather murky northeast, but northwest Scotland looks mostly fine. The morning will bring sunny spells and further showers to the south of Ireland and much of Britain, but eastern parts will stay quite cloudy. Northern Ireland and the north of Ireland look like turning mostly dry, with early showers soon clearing. It'll be quite mild, but it'll be windy near northern and southern coasts.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
The 5 of us have made it out of the car.
Welcome to Backstage, the film and TV podcast.